I think we are very concerned, both in terms of how good these attacks are, as well as how they could scale, where a relatively small number of bad actors could try to impersonate lots and lots of people in a really, really short period of time. And once they know how to do it, it's not like they need a high level of sophistication to do it over and over again. Like once upon a time, facial recognition, or, people would talk about like, oh, I'm going to make a mask. Well, you needed a lot of expertise to really do that well. You don't really need anywhere near that level of expertise or the amount of time in order to, convey a pretty convincing generative AI-based attack where I'm swapping out my face with somebody else and trying to impersonate that person.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of CyberCast. I'm Sylvia Oakland, staff writer with GovCIO Media and Research. As the director of the Biometric and Identity Technology Center, Arun Vemury often examines challenging problems and develops practical solutions for a mix of policy, legal, and operational landscapes. He also provides guidance to develop and evaluate new cutting-edge and cost-effective biometric, identity, and privacy-enhancing technologies, along with how to scale them across DHS's enterprise.
We do see that there are common needs here. We plan to continue to do a lot of these evaluations and share the learnings that we get from these tests, obviously with the companies that participate in them, but also with some of the stakeholders, so they have a better understanding of how mature the technologies are and maybe where there are potentially some remaining risks, so that they can understand and devise strategies to manage some of those risks.
At the 2025 Identity Week conference, Customs and Border Protection announced plans to deploy a new windshield facial capture solution at the start of the 2026 fiscal year. Arun discussed some of the challenges that came with testing the biometric capture equipment and what additional testing may be needed as DHS looks to improve the technology.
I think right now it's fair to say that getting people in, like the driver's seat of the car is actually a lot easier than getting people, let's say, in the third row of the minivan in the back. So there's obviously some areas where there could be some technical challenges, or honestly just some, we're not going to restructure how vehicles work. All right, they're going to have, seats and all sorts of other stuff that will obstruct faces. So the question is like, how well will this work automatically, and then how much additional staffing or how much time might be required for officers to make sure they get the remaining data that's needed to support the screening or inspection operation.
DHS S&T has tested different facial recognition capabilities like those used by Customs and Border Protection. Arun said that the agency tested the technology looking for instances of bias. He also said the agency benefited from building off the commercial capabilities from industry partners. It created a good starting point for CBP to build on what they needed, giving a more adaptable solution rather than a one-size-fits-most approach. DHS is also looking for ways to accelerate partnerships through innovative and creative outlets.
We are looking at non-traditional methods of establishing these public-private partnerships. In particular, we use cooperative research and development agreements. So this is something we can engage with companies with in the over the course of maybe a few weeks versus taking months or longer with like traditional contracting actions. And it's a way for us to be able to bring in their technologies, evaluated against DHS or S&T benchmarks, figure out how well they work, look at which ones might be promising, and be able to provide test reports where the industry participants get some sort of feedback about how their technology worked. But then we can also share that within government so that federal agencies understand how mature some of these technologies or solutions are, and they can use that to figure out whether or not they want to move forward with a procurement or if things need additional technology development before they're ready for prime time.
Arun noted that there's a difference between what agentic AI can do and what federal employees may be allowed to let agentic AI do. A balance between safeguards and constraints is a common challenge within the federal space, especially as AI becomes a larger and larger part of the conversation. And there's still a strong interest in keeping the officer as the final decision maker. Arun said agentic AI can work with the human workforce to support a quicker and better informed decision-making process.
There will be an opportunity here to figure out how do I take the different information about, let's say, how many bags someone is bringing across through the airport, where they were traveling from, what their immigration status is. Like there might be an opportunity there for some of these tools to look at a lot of those things in together versus as individual separate data points. But I think at the end of the day, there really is, it seems like there still is a drive for the officer to be the one who's finally making that decision. I can't really speak to CBP on what their longer term goals or visions are. I do see it potentially, hopefully, trying to help facilitate or present the information in a way that's more usable for the officer.
A main reason for using AI is to create a better user experience, either for the customer or for the worker. But a helpful AI is only as good as the data it's fed. Arun said his department has looked to identify where AI models begin to make assumptions. Arun said these corner cases help the team identify weak spots in the models, ensuring the model can be used in real-world situations. He added that partnerships that have created industry challenge days, think hackathons and other competitions, have showcased the rate and importance of technological advancements. Engaging broadly with the industry and having an open discussion are what drives Arun and his team to participate in these industry challenge days. He said he and his team are looking forward to pursuing more industry challenge days and competitions to help inform potential next steps for testing, planning, and collaboration.
We think that this will help bring more good ideas to the table, and really kind of say, okay, we at the end of the day, we need capabilities that work, not really pretty white papers. So it's really about how do we figure out where those most promising technologies are, get that to the people who are planning and trying to make work on acquisitions and other things like that, so that they have an understanding of where the state of the art is and where there are maybe some real opportunities to implement some cool technologies that actually will help improve mission effectiveness a lot.
At the end of the day, Arun told me that his team is looking to answer 3 questions. How to identify what the most promising technologies are to help advance DHS's mission, how to get these technologies to the people who need them, and how to explain the technology's potential to advance the agency's mission. With agents working in offices and remote locations at the northern and southern borders, Arun said remote identity validation, technology like CBP's Global Entry that uses your smartphone to take a photo of you and validate it against your ID, becomes increasingly important.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want to make sure we're dealing with the right person, and this isn't a fraudulent transaction, somebody who's trying to steal a lot of money. So these are things where, again, I think by kind of taking this collaborative approach, by looking at the bigger needs across not only different DHS components but also federal agencies and critical infrastructure sectors, where I think there's a lot of opportunity to help inform industry and help hopefully test once and share broadly across a lot of stakeholders.
Arun said the tools used at DHS work together to create a holistic look at matching identities alongside the biometric data. Tools like facial recognition are coupled with document authentication or validation tools to combat risks posed by generative AI.
As you've probably seen, like face swap and other types of attacks where now I'm impersonating somebody else, and maybe both in terms of my facial appearance in the video as well as just with my voice. You only need a few seconds of voice in order to clone people's voices, sometimes very, very, very well. So we're looking at that as another class of technology in this whole area of remote identity. It is vastly more complicated to evaluate. So it's something that is not trivial. It's something that's really quite complicated, but we are talking to our interagency partners, and we're talking to companies that work in this space to understand like what does a collaborative evaluation of this kind of technology look like? Because it is something where we think it's really important, because those automated tools in the smartphone will fail sometimes, and a good fraction of people will have difficulty, and we need to have a mechanism for them to be able to complete the transactions.
Compared to other attacks, ones that use generative AI are easier to scale. Someone pretending to be me or Arun could scale that to hundreds of other civilian identities, or they could impersonate a government official asking for sensitive information.
Some of the risks are that generative AI technologies could enable massively scalable attacks that where one bad actor could try to compromise a lot of accounts or do it at scale. Like right now, if I were to try to go into your bank, Sylvia, and pretend to be you, I could probably do that maybe a couple times a day and figure out which bank I don't know which bank Sylvia has, and I'll just try a couple of them. But I could do that same thing online and cover like, I don't know, dozens of banks within maybe a few hours, or honestly pretend to be dozens of different people until I found, maybe which account that person has.
As bad actors are becoming better at scaling and spamming their attacks using AI, Arun is also looking at how to make these technologies and processes more usable for all civilians. Thanks for listening to this episode of CyberCast. I'm Sylvia Oakland for GovCIO Media and Research. Want to learn more about all things federal AI? Be sure to join us at our upcoming AI Summit on November 6th in Tysons, Virginia. Check out the full lineup of speakers and register for the event today at www.govciomedia.com/events.